Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle.
Dear students, Rao's IAS Prelims Test Series 2021 is a complete testing and revision course for the upcoming prelims examination. The program will help you prepare for UPSC prelims through a step-up approach. It is a meticulously designed study plan to organize your preparation and keep you on track towards covering the prelims GS and CSAT syllabus extensively from NCERT to the advanced level. The goal of our Prelims Test Series 2021 program is to exhaustively cover all standard sources of study material, including NCERT, with a study plan to test you at par with UPSC level of questions, thereby improving your chances of clearing the prelims examination. To give multiple revision of the entire syllabus from the perspective of civil service prelims pattern, the test series program will also give you the final revision of all topics and themes before the examination through QIP videos and prelims compass notes. The QIP videos or quality improvement program videos are for speedy revision of all important topics for the upcoming prelims examination. QIP videos are kind of crash course for the prelims examination. And prelims compass are 8 subject-wise prelims compilation of all static and current affair topics important for the upcoming prelims. Rao's IAS Prelims Test Series 2021 will include topics test, testing the concept of candidate. It will include thematic test on both the concept and the current affair of that particular theme. It will also include current affair tests covering the monthly current affairs. And there will be full-length test before the final exam to simulate you for the D-Day. There is a link in the description of this video. You can click on the link for registration and to also check out the demo QIP videos.
Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper reading from a UPSC perspective. Now, today let us discuss the important news which has appeared in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 15th December 2020. The news to be discussed has been displayed on your screen and timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So, on this note, let's go through the important articles appearing on today's newspaper from our examination point of view. The first news to be discussed appears as a lead article on page number 6. It says, firing a warning shot across big tech's bows. Lawsuits and regulatory moves in the West suggest that their easy, unchecked expansion may be coming to an end. Now, here notice the two words which have been used by the author. These two words are easy and unchecked expansion of these big tech companies. And these big tech companies referring into this article are Facebook, Google, Amazon, as well as Apple. So, in this regard, this news argues that antitrust lawsuits or anti competitive lawsuits or cases with respect to anti competitive practices of Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple have been filed by United States Justice Department as well as Federal Trade Commission along with European Union. And primarily the charges are anti-competitive practices and forcing the rival out of the competition by entering into such contracts which become suicidal for such rival companies as they can no longer compete against their big tech companies whose revenue runs into billions of dollars. Now, in this regard, you should know that Government of India has enacted the Competition Act 2002 in order to regulate such anti-competitive practices, whereas the United States of America has three laws, namely the Sherman Act of 1890, Federal Trade Commission Act, as well as Clayton Act. So the purposes of the legislation enacted by both Government of India as well as United States is primarily to prohibit such anti-competitive practices which eventually forces the rival companies out of the market through competition as they can no longer compete against their bigger rivals. So it is in this regard, let us go through the viewpoints of this author with respect to these anti-competitive practices and how these anti-competitive practices actually harms the consumer at large. Further, this article also highlights that what are the explicit charges framed against Facebook as well as Google. Now we will go through these charges because then we will try to understand that how these companies are entering into contracts which is actually keeping the rivals out of competition, or rather they are merging the rivals within themselves. So in this regard, let us go through the viewpoint of the author with respect to the antitrust laws or anti-competitive laws both in India as well as United States, and also with respect to the impact of such anti-competitive practices which is being done especially by these four big tech companies. Now, the Competition Act of 2002 says that this act has been legislated keeping in view the economic development of the country and establishes a competition commission. So, two things are important, that this act has been legislated keeping in view the economic development which took place post 1990, and in this respect, it has established a regulatory body known as the Competition Commission of India. Now, the function of this commission is to prevent practices having adverse effect on competition, to promote and sustain competition in markets, to protect the interest of consumers, and also to ensure freedom of trade carried on by other participants in the market. Now, the Competition Act 2002 was based on the recommendation of SVS Raghavan Committee. Now, this aspect becomes important from your examination point of view. And summarily, we can say that the mandate of competition law in India is threefold, namely to check anti competitive agreements, to prohibit abuse of dominance by strong companies over weak organizations, and to regulate mergers and acquisitions or takeovers taking place in the market. So, in this regard, the Competition Act 2002 of India provides for the establishment of a competition commission for the following activities. First, to prevent practices having adverse effect on competition. So, basically, the Competition Commission has the jurisdiction to regulate such practices. Second, to promote and sustain competition in the markets, to protect the interest of consumers, and also to ensure freedom of trade carried on by other participants in the Indian market. So, based on this understanding of Indian Competition Act 2002, let's go through the anti-competitive charges imposed on Facebook as well as Google. Now, the website of Department of Justice of United States mentions that Justice Department sues monopolist Google for violating antitrust laws. Department files complaint against Google to restore competition in search and search advertising markets. Now, the website of United States Justice Department highlights that Google is one of the wealthiest companies on the planet with a market value of $1 trillion. And hence, Google is the monopoly gatekeeper to the internet for billions of users and countless advertisers worldwide. So, because of its monopoly on search engines, it has been stated that Google has used anti competitive tactics to maintain and extend its monopolies in search and search advertising. Further, the complaint says that Google has entered into a series of exclusionary agreements that collectively lock up the primary avenues through which users access search engines. Basically means that once you access Google, then automatically it requires that Google be set as the preset default general search engine, and hence you cannot use any other search engine once you have started using Google on either mobile devices or computers. Another set of charges includes that in many cases, Google has prohibited pre installation of any competitive rival search engine. And it is in this regard, this complaint alleges that Google has unlawfully maintained monopolies in search and search advertising by number one, entering into exclusivity agreements which forbids pre installation of any competing search service. Second, entering into other kind of arrangements which forces pre-installation of its search application in prime location on mobile devices and then make them undeletable. That is, once you have installed Google, then you cannot delete it, regardless of consumer preference. That is, regardless whether a consumer wants Google or not. Third, entering into long term agreements with Apple, which requires Google to be the default search engine on Apple's popular Safari browser and other Apple search tools. And the fourth complaint against Google is that generally using monopoly profits to buy preferential treatment for its search engine on devices, web browsers, and other search access points. Overall, creating a continuous and self reinforcing cycle of monopolization. So, overall, the complaint highlights that these activities, along with other anti competitive practices, harm competition as well as the consumers and also reduces the ability of innovative new companies to develop, compete, and discipline Google's behavior. So, these are the explicit charges framed by the Justice Department on Google. Now, specific charges on Facebook includes acquiring rival Instagram as well as WhatsApp in order to reduce competition from the market. So, in December 2020, the US Federal Trade Commission has sued Facebook, and the complaint alleges that Facebook has engaged in a systematic strategy, including its 2012 acquisition of up and coming rival Instagram, its 2014 acquisition of WhatsApp, and also imposition of anti-competitive conditions on software developers to eliminate threats to its monopoly. Now, the US Federal Trade Commission alleges that this course of conduct by Facebook harms competition, leaves consumer with few choices for personal social networking, and also deprives advertisers of the benefits of competition. Further, the news highlights that similar charges are also framed against Amazon as well as Apple of putting rivals at disadvantage from fair competition in the market. Now, as discussed, even the European Union has framed charges against Google as well as Amazon, and it has fined Google with an antitrust fine of $10 billion. Now, the charges with respect to Amazon are first, whether Amazon favors product offers and merchants which uses their logistics and delivery system. So basically, the first charges is with respect to the fact that whether Amazon favors such products which are sold or offered through Amazon's own logistics and delivery system. And the second charge is framed against Amazon is that Amazon is accessing and analyzing real-time data from other vendors who sells good on Amazon's platform. And this real-time data from other vendors helps Amazon to decide which product of its own to be launched or released and how to price as well as market them as compared to its competitors. Now, this overall results in distortion of genuine competition from the market and gives Amazon an unfair advantage in this entire deal. So these are the charges which have been leveled by European Union against Amazon. So overall, by going through these charges, we understand the kind of monopolistic behavior these four big tech companies pursues. So in this aspect, let us wait what is the legal outcome of these suits which is filed in United States as well as European Union. Now the problem here is that these monopolistic behaviors by these big tech and other companies disadvantages the consumer at large. So, in this backdrop, let us go through the disadvantages which the consumers might face in case of monopolization by these four big tech companies. These disadvantages can be said to be first, fewer options in the market. Second, monopolistic pattern of these companies can drive up the prices of the products offered by them. Third, the monopolization further leads to weakening of privacy laws or privacy controls, and this is done basically by changing the terms of service or agreement by using complex language as well as ambiguous terms. And when we download an app, we are generally asked to accept all their terms and conditions, which contains these minute details in extremely complex languages as well as ambiguous terms. So, accepting all their terms and conditions without even knowing or understanding what these terms and conditions are effectively weakens privacy policy. And by making users accept all their terms and conditions, they end up holding all the data of such consumers without their consent. And this holding of data eventually results in collection of data on all aspects of users' lives, which can be used for certain objectionable uses. Now, these objectionable uses includes marketing and targeted advertising by these companies, influencing and manipulating political outcomes, targeting individuals based on particular criteria, for example, race, religion, color, etc., enabling surveillance by the governments and private agencies. Further, data compiled by these big tech companies can be used or accessed by the governments across the world for their own political motives or for racial profiling, instigating riots, genocide, etc. Now, another disadvantage for the consumer is that unprecedented market power enjoyed by such companies effectively distorts market competition or distorts fair competition in the market. And when these companies are supported by the government, such monopolization or distortion of the market is further institutionalized with the help of government support. Further, support of the government to such big tech companies further weakens data security law in the country. And according to the needs and requirements of such companies, they can put away privacy concerns of so, monopolization by these companies actually disadvantages the consumers at large. So, if a question is asked by UPSC that how does monopolization by these big tech companies disadvantages the consumers, then these are the further points which you can utilize for your answer writing. So the question remains as to why better regulation is important for Indian consumers, especially of these big tech companies. Now, the first aspect highlighted in the article is with respect to the huge population of India, and this will eventually lead to hoarding of data as these companies, namely Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, are used by billions of Indians, and all their choices, lifestyles, etc., will be collected as part of data collection exercise by these companies. So we can understand the kind of access with respect to data these companies, especially Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Apple, as well as Amazon have, including Google. And here it highlights that Google completely dominates the search engine space in India, and most smartphones in India are Android based. Now, another issue highlighted is with respect to collaboration of Facebook and Google with Geo. So it says that now even Facebook and Google are collaborating with India's largest telecom company Reliance Jio, and this will create a single gateway for Indians. So just imagine the amount of data access for Reliance Jio. And with such amount of data access, these companies can go for targeted advertising based on consumers' preferences as well as lifestyle. Now, another problem highlighted here is that we do not have our specific data protection law. Presently, the latest Data Protection Bill 2019 has run into various controversies, and so far it has not been converted into law. So, this also remains to be seen that how does the data protection law comes into place and what are the protection guaranteed under the data protection law, especially with respect to equality, liberty, as well as right to life and personal liberty, including right to privacy, which is an integral part under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. Another problem highlighted is regarding the nexus between these big tech companies and the government. And as already mentioned, that such a nexus may weaken the privacy laws in India. And lastly, monopolization of tech markets will further hamper consumers' choice as consumer will be left with rather no choices and only has to depend on these few big tech companies. So based on our discussion we can conclude by saying that India not only needs strong anti-competitive law which India already has in the name of Competition Act 2002, but such an anti-competitive law must also be backed by a stronger privacy and data protection laws in the country so that the digital companies or the big tech companies can be regulated properly not only with respect to anti competitive practices but also with respect to privacy concerns. Else, consumer choices and consumer rights will reduce substantially to serve unprecedented corporate greed. So this can be the conclusion with respect to our entire discussion. That government of India not only needs strong anti-competitive law, but a strong anti-competitive law must be backed by a stronger privacy law in order to properly regulate these big tech companies having access to huge population data which can be used for various reasons. Now, this discussion becomes important primarily from the perspective of your mains examination and gets covered under GS Paper 1, GS Paper 2, as well as GS Paper 3. Now, in GS Paper 1, this topic gets covered under Effects of Globalization on Indian Society. Paper 2, it gets covered under Statutory and Regulatory Bodies, namely CCI, that is Competition Commission of India. And in paper 3, it gets covered under various aspects and developments related to technology, including challenges of internal security through communication networks, role of media and social networking sites in internal security challenges, as well as basics of cybersecurity. So, after this discussion on big tech companies and their anti competitive practices, let's move to the next topics of discussion. The next news to be discussed appears as an article on page number 7. It says India needs to rethink its nutrition agenda. Poor nutritional outcomes in National Family Health Survey 5 shows that a piecemeal approach does not work. So the National Family Health Survey has been conducted under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare along with International Institute for Population Sciences Mumbai, which serves as the nodal agency. The survey provides for an indicator in order to track 30 sustainable development goals which the country aims to achieve by the year 2030. Further, NFSH 5 includes some new topics such as preschool education, disability, access to toilet facility, debt registration, bathing practices during menstruation, and methods and reasons for abortion. Now, another important aspect highlighted here is that for the first time, NFHS 5 saw details on percentage of women and men who have ever used internet. So, as of now, the survey is being conducted and it is not yet completed. So, let us wait for the final outcome with respect to the National Family Health Survey 5. So, with respect to the National Family Health Survey 5, this article basically highlights some of the findings of the survey. And one of the major findings with respect to this survey is regarding acute malnutrition in 16 states. Now, according to UNICEF, there are three phases of malnutrition. These are stunting, wasting, as well as overweight. Now, such children under 5 years are considered to be stunted who are too short for their age. Regarding wasting, such children are considered as wasted who are too thin for their height. And in this regard, according to UNICEF, 144 million children under 5 years are stunted, 47 million children under 5 years are wasted, and 38 million children globally under 5 years of age are overweight. Another important aspect highlighted here is that the World Health Organization calls stunting as a marker of inequalities in human development. Thus, stunting becomes one of the major phases of malnutrition, not only in India but across the world. So, the findings of the survey highlight that there is acute malnutrition in 16 states, and even anemia level among children and women have increased. Now, anemia refers to decreased amount of RBC or red blood cells in the blood. And anemia decreases the ability of the blood to carry oxygen. Further, the survey highlights about increased obesity, which is because of inadequacy of diets, reflecting lack of quantity as well as qualitative diet to children. The survey also mentions about increased stunting among children. Now, apart from malnutrition, this survey also mentions about certain socio-economic factors. It says that despite high economic growth for a certain period of time, there is high inequality in the society. Another important aspect highlighted in this survey is that there is greater informalization of labor force. That is, more labor force is employed in the informal sector of the economy. Now, employment of more labor force in the informal sector means that they have reduced social security benefits, or they have hardly any social security benefits. Now, another very important aspect mentioned in this article is with respect to reduction or reduced employment elasticities of growth. Now, this is a very important aspect highlighted here. Now, it basically means that the percentage of growth in economy is not reflected in terms of percentage of growth in terms of job creation. Now, let us understand this aspect through an example. India has employment elasticity of zero point 0.1. Now, this means when the GDP in India grows by 1%, then increase in job growth is mere 0.1%. So, this is what is referred to employment elasticity. And this is what the article says, that despite increased growth, there is decreased job opportunity, and this aspect is also referred as jobless growth. Now, the RBI, with respect to employment elasticity, mentions that employment elasticity is a measure of percentage change in employment associated with a 1 percentage point change in economic growth, the aspect which we highlighted here. The employment elasticity indicates the ability of an economy to generate employment opportunities for its population as percent of its growth process. So as you can see that employment elasticity for India is mere zero point 0.1. That is, India is witnessing jobless growth because increase in GDP of India is not at all sustained by increase in job growth. So both these aspects becomes very important with respect to India's socio-economic indicators. That is greater informalization of labor force and reducing employment elasticities of growth. That is jobless growth. Another aspect highlighted with respect to this survey is regarding certain schemes as to how certain public welfare schemes such as MG Narega, Public Distribution System, ICDS, that is Integrated Child Development Scheme, have led to reduction in absolute poverty. So this article says that such schemes which directly reduces poverty should be encouraged by the government. However, the government is not able to spend the amount which is provided for certain schemes. As in a statement provided by Minister of Women and Child Development, only 32.5% allocated to Poshan Abhiyan was utilized by December 2019. Now, regarding Poshan Abhiyan, you must know that the Abhiyan is to achieve improvement in nutritional status of children between the age of 0 to 6 years and pregnant women and lactating mothers. And this improvement in nutritional status is to take place in a time bound manner in the next 3 years. And this 3 years period started from 2017-18 with having fixed targets. So it is in these regards the article says that these schemes which directly impact poverty or nutritional aspects must be encouraged by the government, and the government must utilize all the finances for proper implementation of the scheme. Now, another important aspect highlighted is with respect to increased death due to starvation, and this starvation related death has further increased during the lockdown. Further, during lockdown, it was also witnessed that there was decrease in food consumption, especially among poor and vulnerable households, and also the fact that quality of nutritional intake worsened post lockdown. However, there are also certain positive results which has been highlighted through this particular survey. And this positive result is especially with respect to betterment of access to sanitation, clean cooking fuels, and reduction in domestic violence, and greater financial inclusion for women as access of women to bank accounts have increased. So these are some of the findings which have been highlighted in this particular article with respect to findings of phase 1 of National Family Health Survey 5. Now, as a way forward, this article suggests that a piecemeal approach addressing only some aspects inadequately will not work, especially relating to addressing the issue of poverty as well as malnutrition. Further, the article says that direct intervention, such as supplementary nutrition with respect to good quality food such as egg, fruits, etc., Growth monitoring and behavior change communication through ICDS and school meals must be strengthened and given more financial resources. Focus should also be given towards universal maternity entitlements and childcare services to enable exclusive breastfeeding, appropriate infant and young child feeding, as well as recognizing women's unpaid work burdens. Further, the linkages between agriculture and nutrition needs to be understood both through what type of fruits are produced and what types of food are available, and also the fact that what kinds of livelihoods are generated in farming also should be taken care of. And lastly, the article says that an employment center growth strategy, which includes universal provision of basic services for education, health, food, and social security, is also necessary. Now, this article also mentions about rural urban divide as well as a gender divide, especially with respect to use of internet. So, this particular discussion becomes important primarily from the perspective of GS paper 2, especially with respect to government policies and interventions for development in various sectors, welfare schemes for the vulnerable sections of the population, issues relating to development and management of social sector, including issues relating to health and issues relating to poverty and hunger. Thus, this article becomes very important from the perspective of mains examination, as questions can be asked with respect to findings of phase 1 of National Family Health Survey 5 and also about the National Family Health Survey as to what they aim to achieve. So, with this discussion, let's move to the next articles of discussion. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 1. It says Gujarat to get 30,000 megawatt renewable energy park. Now, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi will lay the foundation stone for what is billed as world's largest hybrid renewable energy park in Gujarat's Kutch district, and this will be close to India-Pakistan border. And this 30,000 megawatt hybrid power plant having solar panels as well as windmills have been established on a 72,600 hectares of land. So, from your prelims perspective, this topic becomes important as it is the world's largest hybrid renewable energy park. And on this hybrid park, solar energy as well as wind energy will be generated. So, this will lead to a generation of renewable energy to the tune of 30 gigawatts. Further, it highlights that the park will have a dedicated hybrid park zone for wind and solar energy storage and exclusive zone for wind park activities. Now, in this regard, we must also know about National Wind Solar Hybrid Policy of Government of India. Now, India has set an ambitious target for itself to reach 175 gigawatt of installed capacity, especially from renewable energy sources such as wind, water, solar energy, etc. And this has to be achieved by the year 2022. Now, with respect to achieving 175 gigawatt of installed capacity, 100 gigawatt has to be achieved through solar energy and 60 gigawatt has to be achieved through wind energy. Now, the question is that what is the rationale behind wind solar hybrid policy? Now, this superimposition of solar as well as wind energy shows that there are large areas where both wind and solar have high to moderate potential. Further, the existing wind farms have scope of adding solar photovoltaics capacity, and similarly there may be wind potential in the vicinity of existing solar photovoltaic power plant. Now, photovoltaics or PV converts light or photons to electricity through voltage, and that's why it is referred as a photovoltaic effect, that is PV. So, existence of both photovoltaics as well as wind turbines will lead up to producing more renewable energy from a particular piece of land. And the strategy with respect to this hybrid system is that wind turbine generators and solar photovoltaic system can operate on the same land. However, for being considered as a hybrid system, the installed capacity of at least one of them, that is either solar or wind, should be minimum 25%. Now, regarding incentives, the government will encourage development of such hybrid parks, that is, wind solar hybrid systems, through different schemes and programs. And all financial incentives available to wind and solar power projects will also be made available to such hybrid projects. Thus, this topic becomes primarily important from your prelims perspective. And in your prelims, this topic gets covered under general issues on environmental ecology as well as general science. With this discussion, let's move to the next article. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 3. Now, this news highlights about black fungus or mucormycosis. It says cases of COVID triggered fungal infection surface. 4 out of 10 people with the disease have died. So, in this news, you must know about mucormycosis, and it is also referred as black fungus. Now, according to Center for Disease Control of United States, there are different type of fungus that mostly causes mucormycosis. These are Rhizopus species, Mucor species, Rhizomucor species, Syncephalastrum species, Epiphyomyces species, and Listhemia species. Now, mucormycosis is a serious but rare fungal infection caused by a group of molds called Mucormycetes. Now, these molds live throughout the environment, and mucormycosis mainly affects people who have health problems or take medicines that lower the body's ability to fight germs and sickness, basically, whose immune system is weakened. It says that it most commonly affects the sinus or the lungs after inhaling fungal spores from the air, or the skin after fungus enters the skin through a cut, burn, or other type of skin injury. However, it can occur in nearly any part of the body. Now, these black fungus live throughout the environment, particularly in soil and in decaying organic matter, such as leaves, compost piles, or rotten wood. Now, it further highlights that people get this mucormycosis by coming in contact with the fungal spores in the environment. For example, the lung or sinus forms of the infection can occur after someone breathes in spores. This disease, that is mucormycosis, can also develop on the skin after the fungus enters the skin through any cut, scrape, burn, or other type of skin injury or skin trauma. Now, regarding types of mucormycosis, it highlights about these different types of mucormycosis. First is sinus and brain mucormycosis. This is an infection in the sinus and can spread to the brain. Now, it says that this form of mucormycosis is most common in people with uncontrolled diabetes and in people who had a kidney transplant. Now, next is pulmonary or lung mucormycosis. Now, this is the most common type of mucormycosis in people with cancer and in people who have had an organ transplant or a stem cell transplant. Next is gastrointestinal mucormycosis. Now it says that this is more common among young children than adults. That is, it is mostly among young children, especially premature and low birth weight infants less than 1 month of age, who had antibiotics, surgery, or medications that lower body's ability to fight germs or sickness. Now the next is mucormycosis related to skin. Now, this occurs when the fungus enters the body through any cut or break in the skin. And lastly, it mentions about disseminated mucormycosis. It says it occurs when the infection spreads through the bloodstream to affect another part of the body. Now, this infection mostly affects the brain but can also affect other organs such as spleen, heart, and skin. So, overall, mucormycosis is a very deadly disease. Now, symptoms with respect to sinus and brain of mucormycosis includes one-sided facial swelling, which has been mentioned in this news with respect to the patient in Sir Gangaram Hospital, headache, nasal or sinus congestion, black lesion on nasal bridge or upper inside of mouth that quickly becomes more severe, as well as fever. Now, symptoms for pulmonary mucormycosis includes fever, cough, chest pain, and shortness of breath. Now, mucormycosis related to skin looks like blisters or ulcers, and the infected area may even turn black. Now, other symptoms include pain, warmth, excessive redness, or swelling around any wound. And symptoms of gastrointestinal mucormycosis includes abdominal pain, nausea and vomiting, and gastrointestinal bleeding. Now, the decimated mucormycosis typically occurs in people who are already sick from other medical conditions. So, it can be difficult to know which symptoms are related to mucormycosis. Further, it says that patients with disseminated infection in the brain can also develop mental status changes or coma. So, overall, we understand that mucormycosis is a very severe kind of disease. Now, this topic of mucormycosis becomes important primarily from your prelims perspective and gets covered under general science. So, with this discussion on mucormycosis, let's move to the last topic of discussion. Now, let us take these three news as snippets. Now, these three news is with respect to first, US agencies hit by massive cyber attack. Now, in this news, you basically needs to know about malware in computer network, which is basically a malicious software, ransomware, or spyware which tries to gain unauthorized access to the network. Now, here, with respect to the cyber attack, various US government agencies and the secrets are at risk. Now, the next news is regarding the stealth frigate Himgiri. It says that this is ready. An offshore patrol vessel Saksham 2 launched into water to join Coast Guard. So, the stealth frigate Himgiri has been built under Project 17A, in which 7 ships are to be built having advanced stealth features. Now, stealth features refers to such features through which they can avoid any radar detection. Now, ships under Project 17A are indigenously designed by Directorate of Naval Design and built at Musgao Dock and GRSE, that is Garden Reach Shipbuilders and Engineers at Kolkata. Further, this particular news on page number 14 mentions about CII urges center to disinvest aggressively and also monetize assets. Now, this news highlights that because of economic slowdown, there has been a continuous decline in tax revenue of the government, and this overall has severely constrained the ability of the government to undertake financial stimulus to counter slowdown. So, the government cannot take these measures because they do not have sufficient revenue. Not only that, there is also decrease in tax revenue, and cumulatively it makes very difficult for the government to meet their fiscal deficit target of 3.5% in the present financial year. So considering these economic slowdown and decreased government revenue, the Confederation of Indian Industry has suggested or urged the central government to aggressively go for disinvestment of public sector undertakings, that is, sell part of the government undertakings of PSUs. Now, in this regard, it is to be noted that even the government has set an ambitious disinvestment target for itself of rupees 2.1 lakh crores for the present financial year. That is, the government aims to earn rupees 2.1 lakh crores by disinvestment process. So overall, it remains to be seen as to whether government actually achieves this target and whether government aggressively goes for disinvestment to generate revenue. Now, all these three news have been covered extensively in the PDF, so you can refer to the PDF for these three news. Now, after our discussion, this becomes the question for the day. The question is, world's largest hybrid renewable energy park is to be established in. Options are A. Kerala, B. West Bengal, C. Gujarat, and D. Maharashtra. Now, coming to the answer of yesterday, the question was, consider the following statements. Indian Coast Guard is responsible for coastal security in territorial waters, including areas to be patrolled by the coastal police. Yes, this is correct. Second, to enhance maritime security, India has taken the membership of Indian Ocean Commission in March 2020. No, this statement is incorrect as India has become an observer of Indian Ocean Commission in March 2020. So the question is, which of the above is are correct? So the correct answer is A, that is one only. And with this, we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you.